Monday, everybody. If you haven't seen any of our Hope Heals videos yet, my name is Logan Shaw and this is Taylor Romero. And we're with the Suicide Education and Support Services Program at North Range Behavioral Health. September marks Suicide Awareness and Prevention Month. And today, during our video, we will be taking a deep dive under the surface to talk about some signs and symptoms of those that may be at risk for suicide.
So before we talk about these signs and symptoms, we first want to go over a few things with all of you that are watching. I want to start out by mentioning if someone you know has died or does die by suicide, it is never your fault. You are only responsible for what you know when you know it.
Yes, thank you for adding that, Taylor. I would also like to add that sometimes these signs and symptoms aren't even noticeable for someone that is feeling suicidal, and other times some of these signs and symptoms could just be their normal behavior or them having a bad day. However, with that being said, sometimes noticing these signs and symptoms could be the thing that helps you save that person's life.
We really want to emphasize that just being aware of these signs and symptoms and noticing when someone's behavior is out of the ordinary is essential in suicide prevention. So with that being said, let's jump into some of these warning signs. Some of the more obvious warning signs might include serious depression, loss of interest in things that they once enjoyed, isolation, comments about death and dying, giving away prized possessions, and even feelings of worthlessness, guilt, and hopelessness. One thing that really is not brought up enough when discussing these signs and symptoms is that untreated depression is the #1 reason people die by suicide. A lot of the times when someone has depression, you are unable to tell. So if someone tells you that they have depression, it is best to support them however they need you to. Remember, the only way that someone will open up and tell you that they are depressed or struggling is if you listen to them in a words are hard today, Logan.
It's fine. We're real people. We have edits and all those things in here too.
Yep. If you listen to them in a non-judgmental way and make them feel heard.
You made it. Good job.
Woohoo!
All right. Well, although some of those signs and symptoms that Taylor mentioned earlier might seem a little bit more obvious, some individuals that are struggling might show them in a little bit less obvious of a way. Remember, with these signs and symptoms, they're not always black and white. Suicidal thoughts and depression isn't black or white, and signs and symptoms might differ from person to person. So some of the less obvious signs might include stress or worrying, changes in eating or sleeping habits, fatigue or decreased energy, difficulty concentrating or making decisions, or even sudden drop in school or work performance. These are the signs and symptoms that we all need to be a little bit more aware of because they're not so obvious. These ones are a little bit more tricky to notice because they can differ from person to person and can definitely change depending on what life stage that person's in.
Exactly, Logan. And to that point, when we're working with teenagers, we often mention their eating and sleeping patterns and the many changes that teenagers are going through. Mm-hmm. Even when talking about someone's eating habits or sleeping habits, everyone has so many different coping skills. And honestly, many people use food as a coping skill. I mean, I don't know if you noticed, but just the other day, I ate probably at least 25 Tootsie Rolls. Obviously, chocolate is my coping skill. Those of you that are watching, if you all feel comfortable, go ahead and drop your favorite coping skill in the comments section.
Yeah, Taylor, that's a really good point. With these less obvious symptoms and signs, it might just be someone's way of coping, sleeping in a little bit later. And getting a few more Z's always helps a little bit with your mental health and your mental state you're in. So that's why we say just to be aware of these and not be super worried, but definitely just be aware if it falls within their kind of normal patterns of their day-to-day life. So on a more serious note of not talking about Tootsie Rolls, if you do notice someone showing these signs and symptoms, much like we talked about in our previous Hope Heals video, it never hurts to ask those difficult questions and have conversations about, hey, how are you really doing? If someone you know is exhibiting these signs and symptoms, please don't hesitate to trust your gut and reach out to get them help. Some of the resources that we like to recommend is, of course, to maybe get started with a counselor. Talking with someone about those feelings is never a bad idea. However, if you feel like the situation is a little bit more urgent, then talking to a counselor, see, words today are not a thing.
Exactly.
And talking to a counselor, you can reach out to the Crisis Center, which is located at 928 12th Street in Greeley, and walk-ins are always welcome. There are also other ways that you can reach out for help, including the Colorado Crisis Line and the text line. You can find more information about all those resources we just discussed and a few more in the comments below.
So we know that what we talked about today is pretty heavy and it can be a lot. So if you're able and haven't seen it yet, please go and view our previous video in the Hope Heals series about calming the chaos. There are a lot of really great coping skills in that video and resources available for you. Be sure to take some time for yourself, whether that's this afternoon or sometime this week.
Yes, so true. It's so important when we're talking about these heavy subjects to remember to take care of yourself and to give yourself so much grace during these conversations. It's definitely not an easy thing, and that's why we're talking about it and shedding some light on it. So please join us again next week on Monday, September 27th at 12:30 for our final video in the Hope Heals series that is all about sharing hope, getting involved, saving a life, and how you can prevent suicide. Please feel free to check out the comments in this video for resources available to you and find out how you can join us throughout the month in our suicide prevention efforts.
Thanks for joining us.
Bye. Have a good day.